Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 27th day of May, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got, let's see, on the breakup map, really starting to wind down now. Of course, all the rivers south of the Brooks Range all open right out to the coastline, and North Slope rivers have some open on well, Colville has at least the lower half has some open, and mostly open on the upper half. And the Sagwan, same thing, some open all the way out to the coast. And so essentially breakup's about over. And moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, now we've got interesting here as we slide into the 1st of June. We got winter weather advisories out for the Koyukuk and Yukon Flats and surrounding uplands there for let's see, it's currently out now and is due to stay out until, let's see, until Saturday, till noon Saturday. Winter weather advisory there, looking for a couple inches of snow. It's actually for the higher elevations. Could see 2 inches snow, blowing snow, the summits of the Steese Highway. Looking for a couple inches that could create visibilities on the low side and blowing snow with winds gusting to 35 miles an hour. And there's also a winter weather advisory out for the eastern Alaska Range there until 10 p.m. this evening for 3 to 6 inches of snow to fall along the Richardson Highway, along the Tok Cutoff, and windy conditions there as well could create some blowing snow there. That's going to, of course, be the higher elevations there, Isabel Pass in those areas. Otherwise, moving on to the satellite imagery, a lot of clear skies, central western part of the state into the Norton Sound, northern Bering Sea. Had some, looks like some clouds on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. They're dropping down from the Bering Strait, but the south side, sunshine, and spiral in the cloud pattern out there showing a low pressure area just south of Kiska and Amchitka, west of Adak, in the front pushing eastward in toward Unmak Island, but still southwest of the Pribilofs with some gusty winds and areas of rain associated with that. Actually, not just the front, but all the way back into the low center itself. Kind of gets a little more showery for Adak and Atka. Adak picked up about 0.2 of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours. And that was the same amount they had in the last 24 hours, 0.2 of an inch of precipitation there. And wind and rain pushing in, as I mentioned, in toward Nikolsky and Unmak Island. And a lot of clouds, though, off to the east and across the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay area. Otherwise, sunshine, temperatures rising to near 70 degrees this afternoon at, let's see, Russian Mission, Holy Cross, Aniak, and Kelskeg. All had 70 degrees, as well as McGrath this afternoon at 3 p.m. Warm spot, though, Stony, 75 degrees. Port Allsworth to the south of Stony had 72 degrees. Cooler today over the Cook Inlet area, south central Alaska, Anchorage, Matanuska Valley, Susitna Valley in the 50s, with the clouds increasing, upper level, cold upper low dropping southward, kicking the winds up in the interior as well. Moisture, though, falling over the Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Let's see, Chicken picked up about 1/3 of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours. And Upper Chena, 1/10 of an inch of precipitation. Tok, about 5/100 of an inch. And farther to the north, Beaver, about 3/100 of an inch of rain. So actually in toward the just north of the Alaska Range there, not too bad. Some of the amounts, again, anywhere from 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch in the more mountainous terrain. Otherwise, a fair amount of sunshine breaking out over the central and southern southeast coast. Clouds, Prince William Sound, and rolling this through again. Clouds trying to push southwestward there with that upper low, and a little bit of light snow falling along the eastern Arctic coast today with that system. but nothing more than 1/100 of an inch water equivalent there at Barter Island. And on the chart, you can see kind of a tight gradient up there over the northwest interior. No attack today, seeing northeast winds gusting to, let's see, 42 miles per hour peak wind gust today. Ambler northeast at 40 miles an hour for a peak wind gust. And also down in Cook Inlet, Kenai, southwest, gusts just under 40 miles an hour, 38 miles an hour for peak wind gusts there. And pretty breezy, about 30 miles an hour in the Anchorage area, and down around the Kachemak Bay as well. Otherwise, rain and showers on the increase here. Snowfall levels coming down, but all rain at the reporting stations this afternoon. But the higher elevations, that'll be mixed or just in snow, Copper River Basin area. And basically dry for the Panhandle. A little more sunshine over the central and southern areas. And that system out there to the west, you'll see tonight, the front continues to push eastward, not too far though, and the low kind of slipping to the south a little bit, but not moving a whole lot. Call it quasi-stationary. The front's weakening, and wind's really not a factor with the front at all. Just periods of light rain, and kind of a trough out in advance of that, breaking off. A band of moisture there bringing rain into the Pribilofs. Rain, fog, low clouds, IFR flying conditions down across the Alaska Peninsula. And some light rain, Akiak this afternoon. That'll continue into tonight. Shouldn't get too terribly heavy, kind of off and on, intermittent, cloudy skies, maybe some areas of fog. And rain moves into, let's see, raining North Gulf Coast. Cordova picked up about 1/10 of an inch in the last 12 hours. And that'll continue to expand and should move into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. Madanuska, maybe it's sit in the valley. Copper River Basin looks at least showery areas of rain. And that'll slip north of the Alaska Range. Actually, it will be north of the Alaska Range, the disturbance coming down from the north. And looks like some moisture will slide on into the southeast coast, especially the northern areas. Less of a chance down toward the southern Panhandle or toward Dixon Entrance. Definitely see an increase in the clouds there. It's just a dry and mostly cloud-free over the central to the, especially the western interior to the northern Bering Sea or that east-northeast flow. And areas of fog and low clouds up along the Arctic coast. Outlook for tomorrow, periods of rain, or rain and snow mixed depending on your elevation, time of day, and latitude across southern Alaska. Maybe a risk of an isolated thunderstorm or two. Otherwise, wet for the North Gulf Coast, wet for the northern Panhandle, and drier down to the south. Still dry and fair amount of sunshine. Yukon, maybe the Kuskokwim Delta, up into the lower Yukon River Valley area. Ambler, Kobuk Valley, into the northwest coast, looking mostly sunny tomorrow. Still pretty breezy though. And again, the winter weather advisory for the Steese Highway at the higher elevations there, and periods of light snow for the Brooks Range, eastern north slope out to the Arctic coast. And that low sliding eastward, now south of the Alaska Peninsula, frontal boundary just south of the Alaska Peninsula there as well. Periods of light rain from Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay with that weak system there, cloudy and unsettled. And showers scattered along much of these eastern and central Aleutians, drier out to the west, and still pretty good chance of rain over the northern southeast coast. And for the outlook on Saturday, that sharp ridging coming up from the 1,021 millibar high should result in some sunshine there over the southern Panhandle, but still a risk of some showers, mostly cloudy areas to the north, Juneau, Elfin Cove, definitely Yakutat, partly periods of light rain there. And another rainy day coming up for the North Gulf Coast as well as south central Alaska. Cook Inlet, Madanuska, sit in the valley, Copper River Basin, periods of rain, showers north of the Brooks Range along that trough axis. Showers southwest interior, Kuskokwim Valley, Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay to the Fox Islands. Dry with high pressure up over the north slope now, lose the snow chances, and maybe some clearing. And pretty breezy along the southwest coast, actually right down to the Aleutians. Northerly winds, small craft advisory level northerlies. And for the lows tonight, in the 40s southern Alaska, mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, near 40 Copper River Basin, upper 30s Kuskokwim Valley. And we've got 20s to lower to mid 30s for the central interior, upper teens to lower 20s for the Brooks Range, and then the lower to mid 20s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, upper 20s St. Lawrence Island, near 40 for the Pribilofs and the Aleutians, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow, a little cooler, but still trying to push 70 there for Bristol Bay, lower 50s Kodiak Island, lower 50s South Central Alaska, mid 40s Copper River Basin, and 50s for the Panhandle. 50s in the interior, 20s for the North Slope Arctic coast to near freezing on the in the Arctic coast near freezing, mid 40s for the Aleutians in the Bering Sea. Lows the next morning in the 40s southern Alaska, lower 30s central interior, teens Brooks Range North Slope, lower 20s along the Arctic coast, and near 40 out west.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Friday morning, IFR Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast and mostly VFR over the western central interior down to about Bristol Bay. And then we've got IFR, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, possibly into Portage Valley and the Copper River Basin, marginal VFR, some areas of IFR north of the Alaska Range there, up to the Yukon River. IFR for the Panhandle, southern Kodiak Island, Aleutians, Bering Sea, mostly IFR, some areas of marginal VFR. Not too bad over the northern Bering Sea, just some areas of marginal VFR, St. Lawrence Island, kind of thinning out up toward the Bering Strait. And for the afternoon, we've got IFR, north side of the central and eastern Brooks Range, marginal VFR out to the Arctic coast. VFR along the entire stretch of the Kuskokwim, Yukon River valleys, right on out to the coastline. Marginal VFR, Bristol Bay. IFR, St. George Island, marginal for St. Paul, and Amchitka eastward to the Alaska Peninsula. IFR, southern eastern Kodiak Island, and still IFR, a fair amount of moisture there, southeast interior, up to the Brooks Range, even marginal VFR up toward the Yukon River, but not to the extent it will be in the morning. IFR, northern Panhandle, marginal VFR to the south. And for the day Saturday morning, we've got back to the IFR, Brooks Range, north or from the north for the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast there, and still the Upper Tanana Valley or the 40-mile country, about the Yukon River there, Eagle areas of IFR down to the Alaska Range, otherwise marginal. Quite an area of IFR for the Kodiak Island area, Kamishak Bay, southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, all of the North Gulf Coast into the northern two-thirds of the Panhandle. IFR, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, till you get to about, say, False Pass or King Cove. Then it's solid IFR all the way out to the Komodorsky Islands. But from about the Pribilofs, VFR, northward through the Bering Strait, looking really good with VFR flying conditions. And for the afternoon Saturday, Bering Sea looking really good. VFR, pretty widespread. IFR, Amchitka Island to Shimei and Attu. Marginal VFR, Adak and Atka, right on the edge. And the eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR, on up into Bristol Bay. IFR along the western Alaska Range. And IFR still covering a good portion of Kodiak Island up into the southern Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay to Prince William Sound, Passage Canal, Whittier, maybe into Portage Valley. And right hanging up on the Coast Range, so north of the Coast Range, marginal VFR, Copper River Basin, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, and on up to a lesser extent north of the Alaska Range. Southern Panhandle becoming VFR, but IFR hanging tough in the north. For Anaktuvuk, IFR trending toward marginal VFR tomorrow afternoon. Same trend for Adigan as well. IFR to start, maybe marginal to finish. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, possible marginal VFR on the eastern entrance. Rainy though, VFR. Windy, marginal. Isabel, marginal becoming IFR, southern approach in the afternoon. And Mentasta, marginal VFR, again southern approach, possibly IFR. Tanita, marginal becoming IFR. And for Portage, IFR, start to finish. And Chilkoot and White, IFR. Looking at the freezing levels, 2,000 feet, getting just south of the eastern Alaska Range there, 6 to 8,000 feet, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and the eastern southeast Bering Sea. Icing, a lot of moisture coming down into the southeast interior with the upper level trough, areas of moderate or considerable moderate rime icing there, and then the system just south of the Alaska Peninsula giving an elevated threat of some light icing to the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. Jet stream, there's that upper level trough digging south and southwestward into the central interior by tomorrow afternoon or mid-afternoon. 95 knot northeast winds coming down across the eastern Arctic coast through the Brooks Range there, coming back around from the west at 60 knots over Prince William Sound. And not too bad for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Easterlies, maybe 50 knots there, central Aleutians, but pretty light up over the Bering Sea. And at 9,000 feet, we've got northeast flow, 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island, 45 knots, western Arctic coast, and about 25 there for the Yukon Delta, 45 knot easterlies for the Fox Islands, southwest flow developing there for about 50 knots there for the northern panhandle right around Yakutat, and at 3,000 feet, or at 3,000 feet, southeast 40 knots into Prince William Sound. Easterlies 25 to 35 for the Bering Sea. Look for
planetary conjunction. How's that function? The planets are passing from our perspective. Howdy, stargazers. Trace here. Sometimes planets appear to pass close to each other in the sky, and that is called a conjunction. Conjunctions can happen with any natural nearby object. And this week, Mercury and Venus are in conjunction, and next week, the moon is going to zoom past both Saturn and Jupiter. Let's hit the skies and show you how to find them. First, follow the sun below the horizon and look for Venus. Every night this week, V will get closer to Mercury. Merc will be tough to see, but on Friday, the two will be less than a pinky width apart. Then on May 30th, the moon will approach Saturn and Jupiter in the southeast, coming within a fist width of the gas giant Jupiter on June 1st. The sky might seem static, but it's constantly moving, so don't miss it and keep looking up.
The Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge is a refuge in Alaska. It's the third largest refuge in the National Wildlife Refuge System. North of Fairbanks, it's a vast ecosystem of wetlands. What drives this refuge are natural forces of fire, ice, and water.
The Yukon Flats has got a really interesting history. Back in the late 50s, early 1960s, there was a proposal to dam the Yukon River down by Rampart, which is downstream of the Yukon Flats. And it was a hydroelectric proposal. And so in order to assess the merits of that proposal, people got together because they were a little bit concerned about what the impacts might be on the Yukon Flats, the habitat, and all the people living within the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's quite a few people living within the refuge. We have 7 villages. So in order to figure out how special the Yukon Flats was, the Fish and Wildlife Service banded over 40,000 ducks within the Yukon Flats. And using the band return information, they found out that those ducks were using 45 of the 50 lower 48 states. They were using 7 foreign countries, and they were using most of the provinces over in Canada, as well as all the major flyways down in the lower 48. And so that identified that the Yukon Flats was a special breeding area, and that information, along with a lot of other public information that was gathered during that whole process, really ensured that the dam never did go in, and thus the habitat was preserved.
So what that did is it really highlighted the national importance of this area and how important conserving this particular area is for conserving many other natural areas in the lower 48 and even across the continent.
To protect the Yukon Flats Refuge because we have responsibility towards our future generations to leave land protected in the state that it is now. The Yukon Flats is a wild place. The ecosystem is intact and functioning, and you can't find that very many places in the rest of the U.S.
The Yukon Flats Refuge is among the most important places for ducks. So each spring, millions of ducks, and in addition to shorebirds and geese, raptors and loons, they all fly to the refuge to nest and rear their young. And the reason they are attracted to this area is because it has really enriched wetlands. There are lots of nutrients in the wetlands that provide a lot of food for the growing young.
we also have a lot of predator, prey species like bears and black bears, grizzly bears, wolves. We also have a lot of moose and fur bearers that use the refuge. So overall, there's just a great diversity of both upland, lowland, and migratory bird species that use the refuge.
Most people know the flats as a duck nursery, and that was one of the main purposes that was designed for, but a lot of recent research over the last decade has really illustrated how important it is to a variety of native endemic fish species for subsistence and recreational and commercial fisheries throughout the entire Yukon River Basin and out to supporting commercial fisheries out to the Bering Sea as well. So it supports a variety of different whitefish and salmon species, the northern pike, a little bit of everything that people rely on as cultural identities, but also for subsistence resources and where people go to recreate and enjoy being outside.
The type of recreation that you're going to find on Yukon Flats Refuge is very primitive. And what that often does is it gives people a complete break from some of the stresses of today's world. There are no cell phone towers out there. There are no roads. There are no trails. So any type of recreation that people have is entirely natural. The lands and waters within the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge are open to the public to enjoy. And that's a really important tenet upon which the United States is built.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking at today's sea ice analysis, quite an open area of water there in central eastern Norton Sound and some thinner ice up in Norton Bay. And the ice pack coming back up to about St. Lawrence Island with not much ice to the south, but still some heavier ice on the North Shore and areas of heavier ice up into the Bering Strait, and slowly opening up or thinning out their central Arctic coast. East side, though, pretty solid until you get over toward Mackenzie Bay. And for the coastal water forecasts, we've got small craft advisories on the extreme north coast, southerlies 20 to 25 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas. South coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots, and south 15 for the southern inside waters, Clarence Strait. Stevens Passage, southeast winds 20 knots, 4 foot seas. And a little windier there for Lynn Canal. Southeast sustained 30 knots, good for small craft advisories, 6 foot seas, and gale force gusts to 45 knots. Outlook for Saturday, first day of the weekend. Small craft advisories, Lynn Canal, northern inside waters, southeast 25 knots, but the central and southern inner channels there looking at southeast winds at about 15, 3 foot seas. Small craft advisories for the south coast for southeast winds at 25 knots, seas around 10 feet, and then that picks up on the north coast there, 30 to 35 knots from the southeast with 12 to 13 foot seas. Prince William Sound, east winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Small craft advisories for the eastern North Gulf Coast, southeast 25, 5 foot seas. Southeast winds at 20 knots for the Barren Islands and Kemishak Bay. Western North Gulf Coast, just east winds of 15 knots, and southern Cook Inlet, southwest at 20, with variable to east wind for the area north of the Forelands at 10 knots. Then for Sunday, northern Cook Inlet, northeast 20, southern Cook Inlet, north 25, small craft advisories, 8 foot seas. Small craft advisories also for Kemishak Bay, northeast winds at 25 knots, 8 foot seas. Barren Islands, east 25, and small craft advisories in Prince William Sound, so quite an increase there. East winds sustained 30 knots, seas building to 7 feet, and 40 knots southeast winds for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Of course, that means gale warnings, and 12 foot seas, lighter winds for the western North Gulf Coast, east at 20. And for Kodiak Island, southeast to northeast winds there at 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas. Bristol Bay, east winds 15 knots and seas 1 foot. And for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, northeast winds 20 knots, northeast 30 Pacific side. Outlook for Saturday, southeast 20 knots Pacific side of the peninsula, otherwise east 25 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Bristol Bay, northeast 25 knots, small craft advisories there, and Shelikof Strait for 25 knot winds, east side of Kodiak, south at 15. Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, east 20 knots tomorrow. Unmak Island, north to northeast at 15. East northeast 15, Adak and Atka. Amchitka, northeast 20. Kiska, Shumi, and Attu, north at 20, with seas just under 10 feet. 20 knot winds again for Saturday. Shimia to Kiska, Amchitka, small craft advisories, north 25 knots. And 30 knot winds out of the north for Adak, Atka, and Unmak Island, Unalaska Island, east northeast at 30 knots. Seas running 9 to 12 feet. Southwest coast, small craft advisories, Yukon Delta coast, St. Matthew Island, and St. Lawrence Island, as well as Norton Sound, all northeast 25 to 30 knots. 20 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Lightest winds will be found over the Pribilofs, northeast at 15. And for Saturday, let's see, northeast 30 knots now for the Pribilofs. Small craft advisories, and that extends right up to the Yukon Delta coast and into the bay, northeast 30. And small craft advisories for north to northeast winds for the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, and Norton Sound, with seas running 5 to 8 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, north 15 to 20 knots, light north winds at 10 on the central coast, northeast 15 west side, and brisk wind advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales for northeast winds 25 knots. Those drop off, turn a little more northerly on Saturday, about 20 knots there, Wales to Cape Beaufort, and 10 knot winds on the western coast, southwest 15 central coast, and pretty light variable winds 5 to 10 knots for the east side. And for tonight, look for some light snow, fog flurries there for the eastern North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast as well, and quite a load of moisture coming into southern Alaska and the southeast interior, slipping even north of the Alaska Range, looking for periods of rain through tomorrow for south central Alaska, chance of snow up over the North Slope and Arctic coast into the Brooks Range, and for Saturday, looks continued wet southern Alaska.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.